like that, watch your fucking back, cause my stay strapped. Not playing.
Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we're gonna be discussing the murder of a Compton Piru named Lil Red Flag on October 1st, 2011 in Long Beach, California. At around 7 p.m., a 19-year-old man named Bernard Williams, a known Rollin 20s Crip, was outside in a shopping plaza talking with his friend named Bridget. Moments later, a man named Hayden, also known as G-Loke, would walk up and join the two in the conversation. Now, not long after, Bridget would eventually leave and head back home as Williams and Hayden continued to talk in the parking lot. Moments later, a 29-year-old Raynard Fulton, aka Lil Red Flag, a known Hollywood Piru from Compton, could be seen riding his bike through the parking lot. As Raynard rode his bike, Williams and Hayden would immediately approach him and start pressing him. They would start asking him where he was from. Moments later, a fight would break out and Williams and Hayden would start jumping Raynard. Now, in the midst of this chaos, a gun will be drawn and 2 shots will ring out. Raynard will be hit twice in his lower back and once in his mouth. Now, afterwards, both Williams and Hayden would flee the scene. A nearby witness would immediately call 911, would tell the dispatcher that he saw a man that was about 6'3", wearing dark shorts, fleeing the scene, and he would ID this man as the shooter. Police and EMTs would arrive on scene shortly later. Raynard will be transferred to the hospital, where sadly he would die sometime later. Now, after fleeing from the crime scene, Williams would text his friend named Bridget. He would tell her that he was okay, and she would then ask what happened. His immediate response would be, "We shot cuz." And then Bridget's response would be, "You had a gun?" And Williams would say, "Yeah, always." She would then go on to ask him why he shot the man. And Williams would respond back, "You mad? He was set tripping." And Bridget will respond, "That's dumb. That's why I don't gangbang." Now, back at the crime scene, the police would obtain surveillance footage from the shopping center. Now, the video footage would not show any fight, but it would show 2 men fleeing the scene, one tall man wearing dark pants, which was Hayden. The other man, a short man wearing a gray hoodie and basketball shorts, which was Williams, who had his hands in both pockets as he ran away. Now, to follow him more, Bernard Williams would text Bridget yet again. Her first response to him would be, "Y'all killed that guy." And Williams would say, Yeah, I know, he was a Piru." She would respond back, "It was a question." And his response would be, "Oh, my bad, yeah, we did." She would then send him a eye-rolling emoji and say, "I guess." And Williams will respond back immediately asking her, "Are you mad?" And Bridget will respond back saying, "You killed somebody." Now, after continuing texting her, Williams would then start texting his roommate, a woman named Payla Fox, telling her that he was the shooter and that he needed to get out of town immediately. And he did not want her to tell her husband about what happened. But her first response would be, "Shut the fuck up, you lying." And Williams would say, "On 20s. She would then say, "It was Hayden." And Williams would respond back by asking her, "How did she know?" And her final text back would say, "Because I know things, nigga." Williams would then respond back by telling her he believed his fingerprints were on that bike at the murder scene. Now, 2 weeks later, Williams would then sell his cell phone to a teenager in the neighborhood. Now, later that day, he would text that same teenager, telling him that he needed the memory card out of that phone immediately. Now, as the police continued to investigate this murder, they would discover that 29-year-old Raynard was a Compton native, but at the time he was living with his girlfriend out of Long Beach. Now, the autopsy report would show that he had been shot in the corner of his mouth, but the fatal shot had entered through his lower back and traveled upward, hitting his liver and heart. Blood samples would also reveal alcohol, PCP, and weed were found in his system at the time of his death. Now, 6 months later, the police would have all their evidence to get a warrant for Bernard Williams. And not long after, Williams would be arrested of the murder of Raynard Fulton, and only 2 months later, Hayden, also known as G-Loke, would be arrested in connection with the murder also. Now, police would interview the original witness who had called 911, who had originally stated that the shooter was 6'3" with shorts. But his story would change this time, and he would say that the non-shooter was wearing the shorts. But once detectives showed him the footage and the pictures of both suspects, the witness then would say that the men that he saw at the night of the shooting were much older, and neither Williams or Hayden looked like any other man that he saw. Now, 1 year later, on July 2013, both Williams and Hayden would go to trial for the murder of Raynard. Both Williams and Hayden would actually testify against each other blaming one another for pulling the trigger. Williams would take the stand and tell the jury that Reynard had approached Hayden aggressively, saying "what's up?" And in response, Reynard would yell out "Compton." Williams would then go on to claim that he tried to de-escalate the situation, but he would say that the victim Reynard looked like he was about to swing, so he swung first, but he missed. And that's when the victim Reynard would punch Hayden in his face, knocking him to the ground. Williams would then claim that he grabbed the bike and tried to hit Reynard, but that's when Hayden pulled out a gun and opened fire. Now, Williams would also deny being a member of the Rollin 20s at the time of the murder, and he would tell the jury that he didn't become a Rollin 20s Crip only until months later after being locked up. He would also tell them that Hayden was a member of the exotic family Crips. Now, after Williams took the stand, Hayden would now get on the stand, and he would immediately deny being a gang member. He would tell the jury that Reynard had approached Williams aggressively and they started fighting, and that he tried to de-escalate it, but that's when Reynard shoved him to the ground, and as he tried to get up, he heard 2 gunshots, and he would tell the jury that he never had a gun in his possession that day. Now, also 2 eyewitnesses would take the stands, both boyfriend and girlfriend who were at the scene of the murder. Stella would tell the jury that she saw 3 men fighting over a bike. She would tell the jury that she saw the victim, Reynard, throw the bike at both suspects and run, and that's when he was shot. Now, her boyfriend, Jorge, would state that he didn't see the shooting, but that he saw both Hayden and Williams fleeing the scene after the shooting took place. Now, the prosecution will present Bernard Williams' text messages between him and his friend Bridget, which took place directly after the shooting. And they will make it clear to the jury that he admitted to shooting Reynard and admitted to having the gun on him. They would also show the text messages between him and his roommate, Payla Fox, where yet again he admitted to the shooting and also referenced to being a member of the Rollin 20s Crips to prove to the jury that he in fact was a member at the time of this murder. Also, an audio interview from April of 2012 between detectives and another roommate of Bernard Williams will be played. A man named Paul Pirano would tell detectives that Hayden had told him that both he and Williams had attempted to rob the victim Reynard for his bike, but that he got knocked out, and afterwards, they both shot him. Now, when police asked him exactly who shot the victim, Paul would only state that Williams told him that Hayden was the shooter, and he would state that the only thing Hayden said is that we shot the victim. Hayden had never directly admitted to being the sole shooter. Now, this audio tape would lead to a dispute whether or not Paul Pirano has stated that Hayden admitted to being the shooter or not. But the courts will allow that to be left up to the jury to decide what they believed. But by the end of the trial, Hayden, aka G-Lo, would be acquitted on all charges. But Bernard Williams will be found guilty of second-degree murder and firearm enhancements, and he will be sentenced to life in prison. I would like to thank everybody for tapping in, and I'll see y'all next time.